I run an Airbnb and it's completely free, but I have some unusual rules. Rule 12, the basement. For your safety, I'm not going to tell anyone where my B&B is, because what I'm about to tell you will probably destroy any hopes you have of coming. Unless you're one of the curious ones. Yes, it's free, and it comes with a pool, a 56-inch TV with cable and great Wi-Fi. Anyone who can keep their head for 3 days in the house will receive up to $10,000 in cash. I also have food stocked up in case anyone neglects to buy some. You may be thinking all of this is a steal, and you're right. Here are the rules. 1. Pets are allowed, but if they're dogs, keep them outside after 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. This is not because I'm cruel, it's because I'm trying to keep you and your dog safe. 2. If you see the pool lights flickering dramatically, check the time. If it's after 7:30 p.m, close the blinds and hide under your covers. 3. On rare occasions, you may find that when you turn on the TV, there will be an advertisement regarding a knife set. As quickly as you can, pick up the nearest object and smash the TV until it goes dark. I will cover the cost of the TV. 4. Do not by any means eat anything I didn't put in the refrigerator. I will leave a list of things I put in there by the time you get to the B&B. 5. If a paperboy knocks on the door offering a magazine, look at his outfit. If he's wearing a hood of any kind, slam the door, lock it, and close any open blinds. 6. If you get a call from a number ending in 8646, do not answer it. Do not block it. Let it ring for as long as it does. After it ends, immediately wash your hands. 7. I can't believe I have to say this. Do not read the unmarked envelope. If you do, pray that your death is swift. 8. If a man with no eyes asks you for a favour, comply no matter what it is. Only refuse if he asks for food or water. He doesn't need it. 9. If you think your reflection looks a bit off, take the ruler I left out in the bathroom cabinet and measure a lock of hair. Look at yours and look at your reflections. If they don't match, smash the mirror into as many pieces as you can. You don't want to know what happens if you don't. 10. Regarding rule number 1, if you're woken up and feel your dog on your bed, do not move a muscle. It is not your dog, and it will leave eventually. 11. If you wake up and it's snowing outside and eerily cold inside, look and see if your breath can be seen. If you can see it, run outside and find the nearest house. Knock furiously until someone opens the door. If the person opening the door is in any summer clothes whatsoever, pray they are merciful. 12. My Airbnb does not have a basement. If you find one, go outside and call me. I'll give you my number when you book in. I will take care of the situation. 13. If you wake up to TV static, do not look at the TV. Get under the covers and try to go to sleep. I learned about the basement from one curious client who met an early demise. It was late in the evening, and the sky was glowing with an orange-pink hue. It was peaceful as my average day guests, and my client had just arrived yesterday. He was a tall man, about 6'5", looking for a place to crash. I mentioned my Airbnb and he immediately agreed to set up camp. I handed him the rules and gave him the usual stay safe speech. Like most, he shrugged it off. I never mentioned this, but I have hidden cameras stashed around the house to keep an eye on my clients and make sure they stay safe. It has come in handy many times. This time though, I couldn't do anything to stop what happened. My client Jay was laying in bed around 8 p.m, watching some curious movies when he went to get something from the freezer. I switched to the kitchen camera and saw Jay stop and look to his right. I followed his gaze and saw an unfamiliar door that looked like an entrance to a cellar, a decrepit-looking door that stood out among the pristine marble floor. Now, I've covered this house top to bottom, and I have never seen this door. I knew it was too late as soon as he took a step towards the door and turned the handle. The cellar door burst open as soon as he touched the handle, throwing him against the wall with a smack. I heard a devastating snap as Jay's spine shattered into pieces, and a giant bony arm jerked out of the cellar and grabbed him by the face. It held him for a second, as if trying to put on a show. My heart was pounding as it happened. The hand closed into a fist, crushing his skull and ending his torture. I almost puked at the sight of his brain splattering the walls of the house, and the hand dragging the remains down into the cellar. Before the feed cut off, I saw in the darkness of the basement one single yellow eye looking straight at the camera. Now you know why I added the rule. Many of you have wondered why I would keep CCTV cameras around the house, citing it as an invasion of privacy. I always tell my clients beforehand that I have the cameras around the house for safety, and most agree that it is a plausible reason. I turn them off, much to my dismay, for those who don't want them. Luckily, most of the braver ones know what they're doing. The only reason I haven't closed down the Airbnb is because I can't, and I mean I physically can't. The one time I tried, well, something really bad happened. I fell into a state of depression afterward and tried to down a bottle of Xanax. I almost threw up my guts, literally. I can't run because I couldn't live with the knowledge that one unsuspecting soul would buy the place, and what would happen if they did? The police don't get involved because the first and only time they searched it, 2 of their best men went missing. I was removed as a suspect because I was being monitored at the police station. Weirdly enough, when I asked a few weeks later why they hadn't sent in more men, they looked at me like I was talking crazy. They didn't seem to remember anything. They don't even recognise my address. It's like it didn't even exist. I don't clean up the messes, the house does it for me. At least, that's my theory. I always come back to find everything replaced after the client leaves or dies, even the TV. I always check the fridge to make sure no unwanted items are in there. But like I said before, it's like the house doesn't even exist, so water and electricity bills aren't a problem. The people in summer clothes aren't the problem, it's their house that you should worry about. Yes, I actually live in the house myself. That's how I learned about rules 2, 4, 7, 9 and 11. I'll make different posts about those experiences. My CCTV room is in a shed outside, complete with a sleeping bag, coffee, snacks and its very own sleep paralysis demon. I'm not in partnership with the house. I hate it with a vengeance. If I could kill it, I would have a long time ago. I tried setting it on fire, and I had a brand of a skull seared into my forearm by my reflection. I tried demolition, and the crew got into a fatal crash before they got there. The entity controlling the house is a being of unspeakable power. It goes by the name of Marduk, who is apparently the lord of some other hell. I tried to speak with him, and he used me as a doll to torture for what seemed like an eternity. My sanity was barely intact by that time, because of what had been done to me and what he showed me. Just thinking about it makes me want to tear out my intestines and hang myself with them. Since people have been asking why I don't tell anyone where my place is, I will humour you, it's in Tennessee. Just to be clear, I withheld that because I didn't want anyone to come here in the first place. But the house has its own set of rules for me. I hope that answered any questions you had for me. I've run this Airbnb for about a year now, and to date I cannot say I've found any other being more deceptive than this. The first time I encountered the reflection was when I took a selfie for an online profile. I put on a smile, struck a pose and took the photo. I don't know if it was the flash or just hating pictures, but my reflection swayed for a split second. If you don't understand what I'm saying, think of a reflection on the water when you drop a pebble in. The reflection distorts, right? It was like that, but on solid glass. Casually, I looked at my phone and tried to slow my breathing. If I know anything about the ethereal, it's that they know when you notice them. I checked the photo and I almost threw my phone into the mirror right then and there. It was my body, yeah, but everything was wrong. I was bleeding thick black tar from the sockets where my eyes should be, running down the sockets all the way to my cheeks. Speaking of, they were stretched so much I thought they would split right there on the phone screen. It was because I was smiling from ear to ear, literally. It was so wide I could see my front gums, charred and blackened like soot, and rows of yellow teeth filled my mouth. 10 seconds later I made the biggest mistake of my life. I got scared. The picture looked at me from inside my phone screen. It raised its hand. I heard a tap, tap, tap as the reflection poked the phone screen with a spindly hand. Against all laws of physics, it smiled even wider, and my heart dropped as I realised my mistake. The tapping wasn't coming from the phone. I didn't even get to look up before 2 fingers were jammed into my retinas. I screamed like anyone would in that situation because, as I would learn later, the hell I was experiencing was nothing compared to the pain that would come next. I felt the blood flow down my face while it dragged me by my eye sockets into what I assumed was the mirror. As I said, I just had my eyes jabbed out, breaking my back in the process and tossing me onto a cold, hard floor. The blood pooled beneath my pained body, spreading onto some unknown surface. It was so nothing. Not even darkness existed there. It wasn't black, but there was still nothing. I heard the voices of the dead trying to get loved ones to hear their cries, and I felt the pain of 1,000 deaths seared into my soul. I laid on that floor for what felt like months, crying tears that would never come. When I finally gained enough strength to push my body off the floor, I frantically grasped for something, anything to hold on to. No success. Then I saw something. I don't know how, but it was like a radar signal from a mile away. The thing was really faint, just a red, moving figure that looked like thick smoke. I wasted no time crawling toward the figure. I was in a frenzy, and the only thing I could think of was getting back to my home. I drowned out the deafening cries of the dead and kept crawling toward my goal. As I reached my target, I threw my hands out and grasped. My thumbs pierced 2 slimy, wet holes as I dragged whoever was there onto the ground. My muscles ached the whole time, but that didn't stop me from leaping into the space where the man once was. I reached through the mirror's edge and thrust myself through the veil into my own reality. My face reached the edge, and I felt my eyes repairing themselves as soon as I crossed. I recognized the tile floor pattern and realized I was back home. I was a weeping, sobbing mess for a while after. That's where the story ended. I want to sympathize with whatever dragged me into that hell in the first place. But ever since that incident, I always keep a camera or ruler by my side, just in case someone else meets a worse fate than I did. I don't understand why people are so damn curious sometimes. Even when there's evidence of something dangerous happening, they trudge along like everything's fine. Take a look at horror movies. The reason they're so cliché is because that's the reality of it. People are naturally curious, and that's the reason I'm writing this. Someone broke one of the most important rules of the house. They opened the envelope and they died. They were curious, and that very curiosity killed them. The man arrived around 5 p.m. yesterday wearing some casual attire, sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked exhausted, like he had just come home from work. I would later learn that yes, he got off early from his job at Kroger, and since he was struggling financially at the time, he saw the $10,000 prize and decided to take the challenge because, in his words, money is money. We went through the usual nonsense. I showed him the rule pamphlet. He looked at me funny and sauntered into the house. That is the usual reaction of my clients after they review the rules. Kind of funny, if you think about it. The day went by smoothly. In fact, this was one of the only days that nothing in particular happened. I stayed up till 12, making sure nothing unusual occurred. He cooked a few burgers, brushed his teeth, turned on the TV and slept. I did the same a few minutes later, and for the first time in a while, I felt somewhat safe as I drifted off to sleep. I was greeted with the storm. Torrents of wind were throwing things everywhere. The shed where I was sleeping was completely wrecked. My computer was shattered, the table was gone, everything was in chaos. Shaking off sleep, I bolted up off my makeshift bedding and took in my surroundings. Pillars of flesh and muscles stood in every direction, visibly writhing and pulsating. The terrain was of a desert hell, sand whipping around with the wind in tow. To the left of me stood the house, dishevelled and broken yet still standing. The only visible difference was the material it was built with. Human bodies stitched and moulded together like something out of a Lovecraft book. They screamed and wailed as they saw me waking from their dormant state. Their arms stretched out towards me with malice, their gurgling and crying only adding to the madness of the situation I was in. Unfortunately, I had no time to act. All I could think about was finding shelter. As I tried frantically to get to the house, as it was my only form of housing, I was swept off my feet by a gust of wind, making me spin on my arse and land in the opposite direction. Nothing prepared me for what happened next. In front of me was a swirling black void, nothing but an abyss, an inky black pit, a space in which nobody was welcome, no matter the purpose. As the storm grew, the dark did as well, expanding and morphing into a humanoid state. I won't even try to describe it because I can't. It changed and shifted every mere millisecond, morphing into something else before I could comprehend what I was seeing. The only thing that stayed the same was a single red eye resting in the middle of its head. The void raised what I could only say was its fist, and presented me with a thing it was clutching. My client, writhing and screaming in unimaginable terror as he was being tortured by this thing in front of me. "So, you have brought me my prey, human," the thing bellowed with a horrifying intensity I knew all too well. I shielded the wind from my face and yelled out to him, "Marduk! Indeed, human, you have not forgotten." "Why am I here? What did I do this time?" I questioned. Marduk slammed his foot into the ground, throwing me off my feet. "You have disturbed my slumber, human. A worthless slug such as yourself should have been killed by my hand as soon as you set foot in my realm," he thundered. The wind started to pick up, and everything around me seemed to slow. The clouds grew thicker. The rain slowed around me so much so I could count the drops in front of me. "You forget who I am, human. I am your god, your devil, your creator. I am eternal, human. You are not. I've seen the seeds of death and rebirth grow. I've seen your galaxies fly apart and be reborn again. The wonder of your universe is that it will soon cease to be." Marduk tightened his grip on the man, who was turning visibly purple with fear. "I have witnessed the life and death of worlds. I have seen suns fade and die in this place. I have watched entire galaxies devolve and become nothingness. I have seen the birth of new worlds in this place, and I have created new dimensions full of death and disease. You talk of fun, of love, of light, of play. That is all just so much nonsense, don't you think? Your universe is not so simple, human. I could crush you without so much as blinking, erase you from existence. No one would remember you at all." Marduk glanced at his prey for a moment, the terrified man he'd clutched in his grip. "Actually," Marduk said, bringing the man up to his face, "maybe I will." That's the last thing my client heard before he was crushed by Marduk's fist. His brain erupted out of his skull and fell to the ground in front of me with a sickening splat. Marduk turned to me, his eyes pulsing with energy. "And you, human, I never want to see you here again. If I do, I hope you enjoy eternity in hell." That's all I heard before I jolted from my sleeping bag, frantically looking around. I realized I was still in my shed. Everything was intact. Everything was in order. The only difference is that when I went to check on my client, he was nowhere to be found. The only thing that proved he ever existed was one charred thumb placed at the front of my house. I must apologize for not posting for a while. Between quarantine and other such problems, I haven't had the time to write about the house lately. I run a free Airbnb in a rural area of the United States, which, as you may know, has some unusual properties. One of said properties or anomalies is a small, scrawny paper boy that will visit every now and then, and he always carries a small package of a sort. I would describe said package, but it's different for everyone. It might be a box, a scroll, an envelope, but whatever it always looks a different way for a different person. I personally see it as a small magazine anytime he pays a visit, but that's just for reference. I guess this is where the story starts, isn't it? It was Monday when my client arrived. He immediately got out of his car, a 2011 Toyota, and started rambling about how his girlfriend kicked him out, how he saw the Airbnb online, and the cash prize that came with it. He figured, why not, and booked it over here ASAP. I quickly realised this guy wasn't prepared for what he was about to deal with, and I pitied him. People like him are too desperate to turn down good money. Still, I handed him the pamphlet, beckoned him inside, and wished him a good 3 nights. What else could I do? I can't kick him out. The house would torture me. I can't beg him to leave or tell him to sleep in the shed. It doesn't work like that. If it did, I could have saved a lot of lives. Morning came rather quickly as far as I was concerned. My alarm clock was thrown across the shed as usual, and as usual I had to get up to stop it from ringing. And again, as usual, I checked on my client. "Do you have a second?" I asked as I walked into the room. "Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to ask me about it," my client said. "About what?" I returned. "The letter." My heart stopped. "What letter?" I urgently asked him. "It was written on some weird grey paper. It's not as bad as when I found it," he continued. "Where did you get it from?" I pushed. The man stared at me, confusion contorting his face. "What do you mean?" "Who gave it to you?" I questioned as I stormed toward him and firmly grasped his shoulders. "Some paper boy, okay? Creepy too. He had this hoodie that looked like something you'd find in a cult or something," he proceeded. At this point he was as good as dead, and the look on his face showed clearly that he knew it too. "Wait, the rules were legit? You weren't screwing with me?" "Yeah, he was one of those people, never believing what's in front of them." "Why do you think I gave them to you, dumbass?" I replied. "I don't know. Maybe you were pulling some sick prank. I don't know, man. What's going to happen to me?" I stepped away from him and shook my head. "I don't know, man. I don't know." It's true. I didn't know. Far from it, actually, because the next day I found his skin strewn across the wall. Plain and simple. That's all I can say. His intestines covered the ceiling like some grotesque Christmas ornament. His torso was nailed to a corner. His arms and legs were sloppily thrown around. His remains in the middle of it all was the black letter placed right by his head. When I opened it, I saw his eyes unblinking and squished into the envelope with a phrase written in his blood. You want to know what it said? Curiosity killed the cat. Hey friends, thank you for listening to today's story. Make sure to click the notification icon to stay updated on all future narrations. I release new videos twice every day at 10 AM and 8 PM Eastern Time. If you have a story to share, please send it to the email displayed on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like and leave an encouraging comment. It really helps me keep bringing you more narrations like this. If you'd like to support the channel even more, you can get early access to all future narrations and bonus content over on Patreon. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.